Right now, as you watch this, the wealthiest people alive are paying to go underground. Not metaphorically, literally. In the deserts of Texas and the mountains of New Zealand, in repurposed missile silos across the American Midwest, and beneath the manicured lawns of Silicon Valley estates, billionaires are spending fortunes to build the deepest private shelters in human history. Steel doors thick enough to stop a blast, air filtration designed to run for years, food, water, power, and a single shared instinct as old as our species, the conviction that when the worst comes, safety lies below, beneath the earth, behind a door. Some of these shelters are converted. Cold War missile silos, hardened concrete tubes sunk deep into the bedrock, now refitted with apartments, hydroponic gardens, and medical bays, marketed quietly to those who can afford a unit. Others are purpose-built compounds in remote countries, chosen for distance and stability, where the ultra-wealthy have reportedly bought land and citizenship as an exit plan. The shared logic never changes. When the surface becomes unsurvivable, you go down and you take the door with you. And it is not only billionaires. Governments are digging too. The acronym they use is sterile and bureaucratic. DUMBs, deep underground military bases. But the meaning is ancient and unmistakable. Across the last 2 years, into 2025 and 2026, the underground race has accelerated. Permits filed, contractors hired, vast sums vanishing into projects no one is allowed to photograph. We are, as a civilization, once again descending. We are sealing people beneath the earth behind doors that are meant, in the worst case, never to open from the outside. But here is what almost no one tells you. We have done this before. And one of the oldest written records on the planet, a Sumerian tablet, pressed into wet clay more than 4,000 years ago, describes exactly this. 10,000 sent beneath the earth, a descent into a place from which no one returns, and a door that closed, and never, ever let them back. What did they know? What did they bury? And why, after 4,000 years of supposed progress, are we doing the very same thing again? Before we go down, and we are going down, all the way down, through the deepest hole humanity ever dug, and into the oldest underworld humanity ever imagined, sit with one small cold detail. The Sumerians did not call the place below death. They had a separate word for death. They called the place below the land of no return. The difference matters. Death is an ending. No return is a direction. It is somewhere you go. And once the records are read carefully, you begin to suspect they were not speaking only of the dead. Let us start with something you can stand inside today. Something real, dateable, and almost impossible to believe, until you have seen the photographs. In the region of Cappadocia, in central Turkey, there is a town called Derinkuyu. The name itself, in Turkish, means deep well, and it earns that name, because beneath the ordinary streets of this ordinary town lies one of the most staggering feats of subterranean engineering ever discovered, an entire underground city, carved straight down into soft volcanic rock, plunging level after level after level into the dark. Here is how it was found, and the story is almost too perfect. In 1963, a resident was renovating his home. He knocked down a wall in his basement, and behind it, instead of more rock or earth, he found a passage, a room, and then another room beyond that, and a tunnel beyond that. He had broken into a hidden world that had been sealed and forgotten beneath his own house. What he had stumbled into was a city that could descend, by various estimates, around 18 levels into the ground, reaching depths of roughly 60 meters or more, and that, when fully populated, could shelter an astonishing number of human beings. The figures most often cited run as high as 20,000 people, together with their livestock and their food stores, hidden completely from the surface. Think about that number for a moment. 20,000 people, underground, in a city with no sky. And this is not legend. This is not a tablet we must interpret. You can walk down into Derinkuyu today. It has stables for animals on the upper levels. It has kitchens, with the soot of ancient cooking fires still darkening the stone ceilings. It has wells for fresh water, dug so that the surface could not poison them by dropping something in from above. It has storage rooms, wine and oil presses, communal spaces, and, chillingly, what researchers identify as a religious school and chapels deep below. People did not merely hide here. People lived here. They prayed here. They were prepared to stay. And the engineering reveals the deepest fear of all. Running the full vertical height of the city are ventilation shafts, narrow chimneys cut through the rock to carry breathable air down to the lowest inhabited levels. Whoever built Derinkuyu understood that the true enemy underground is not hunger and not thirst. It is suffocation. It is the slow death of the air. They engineered against it with a sophistication that humbles us. But the detail that haunts everyone who studies this place is the doors. At intervals along the passages sit great circular stones, carved like immense mill wheels, some weighing hundreds of kilograms. These rolling stone doors could be moved across a corridor to seal a level completely. And here is the cruel and brilliant part. They were designed to be operated only from the inside. From within the city, a single person could roll the great stone across the passage and lock the world out. But from the surface, from the tunnel side, the stone could not be moved at all. There was even a small hole bored through the center of some of them. Not a window, the experts believe, but a spy hole, or a place to thrust a spear at anyone trying to force their way down. So picture it. The threat comes. An army, a raid, a catastrophe on the surface. The people of Derinkuyu pour down into the earth, and then, level by level, they roll the great stones shut behind them. The door closes. From above, no one can follow. From above, the city has simply vanished into solid rock, and the 20,000 are sealed below, in the dark, breathing through shafts, waiting for a danger to pass, or to die down there if it never does. Who builds a city to disappear into the ground? The honest answer is that we are not entirely certain. Cappadocia's underground complexes were used and expanded across many centuries by early Christians fleeing persecution, and likely begun far earlier still, with some researchers pointing to the Phrygians or even earlier peoples. Derinkuyu was connected by a tunnel, miles long, to another underground city, Kaimakli, an entire hidden network, a buried civilization, beneath the surface of the visible one. And Derinkuyu and Kaimakli are only two mouths of something much larger. Across the Cappadocia region, archaeologists have catalogued more than 200 underground settlements of varying size, and some surveys put the count of subterranean sites in the hundreds. They were not random cellars, they were planned, vertical, engineered to hide and to hold. The volcanic stone of the region, called tuff, is soft enough to carve with hand tools when first exposed, and then hardens on contact with the air, as if the very ground of Cappadocia were designed to be hollowed out and then sealed solid. The people who lived above learned to live below, and they did it so well that their hidden cities lay forgotten under farmland and houses for centuries, until a man knocking down a basement wall let the dark breathe again. And here is a question to carry down with you into the next part of this descent. If the instinct to dig deep and seal the door is so universal that strangers separated by 4,000 years and 4,000 kilometers both obeyed it, the engineers of Cappadocia in their rolling stone, the scribes of Sumer in their clay, then where did that instinct come from? What does the human animal know, somewhere beneath thought, about the safety and the terror of the ground beneath its feet? Hold the question. We will need it at the bottom, and that is the documented, provable truth. Hold on to it, because we are about to leave the world of stone you can touch and descend into something older and stranger, the world the Sumerians wrote down. But keep Derinkuyu in your mind as we go. Keep the rolling stone. Keep the door that only opens from one side, because the people who pressed the oldest descent into clay seem to have understood the very same thing. The Sumerians lived in the land between two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, in what is now southern Iraq. They built the first cities, they invented writing, and in their writing, again and again, they returned to one obsession: what lies beneath. They had a word for it. They called it the Kur, and they had another name for the realm of the dead itself: Irkalla, the great below, ruled by a queen. Now here we must be honest with you, because this channel does not sell you fantasy as fact. The Sumerian underworld is a religious and mythological concept. It is a vision of the afterlife. When the tablets describe it, they are describing a belief, not a survey of a literal tunnel. We will tell you plainly where the documented text ends and where interpretation begins. That is a promise. But what the text actually says is strange enough that it needs no exaggeration. The Kur was below, down. To reach it, the dead had to descend, and the journey was not gentle. It was a place of dust, the tablets say. A place where the dead eat dust and clay, where they are clothed like birds in feathers, where light does not come. Over this realm sat a queen, and her name was Ereshkigal, the lady of the great place below. She did not leave. She could not leave. She ruled the dark, and the dark was a kingdom. The Sumerians imagined the descent in physical terms, and that is what makes their underworld so different from a vague idea of heaven or the beyond. To reach the great below, the dead were thought to cross a threshold and pass downward through the earth, and in some traditions they had to cross a river, a man-devouring river, ferried across by a boatman of the dead, the way you might be carried across a flood you could not swim. Beyond the river lay the city of the dead itself, a dark mirror of the bright Sumerian cities above, with its own gate, its own walls, its own queen on her throne. Everyone went there, king and slave, the just and the wicked. In the older Sumerian vision, there was no paradise waiting for the good, and no fire reserved for the wicked. There was only the below, only the dust, the dark, and the dimming of all you had been. And the single thing that softened that fate, the only comfort the living could send down to the dead, was to remember them, to bury the body, to speak the name, to pour out water and food at the grave so the one below would not go thirsty in the dust forever. And here we arrive at one of the most famous texts in all of human literature, a text that maps the descent step by terrible step. It is called Inanna's Descent to the underworld. Inanna was the great goddess of the surface world, goddess of love, of war, of the morning and evening star, the most radiant power in the Sumerian sky. And for reasons the tablet leaves deliberately mysterious, she decided to go down, to descend into the realm of her sister Ereshkigal, to enter the land of no return alive. She did not go unprepared. She gathered her powers, her divine ornaments, the symbols of everything she was, and she left instructions with her trusted servant on the surface. "If I do not come back," she said, "raise the alarm, go to the gods, tell them. Inanna is lost below, even a goddess, you understand, feared what was down there. Even a goddess made arrangements in case the door did not reopen." And then she descended. And this is the part that has chilled readers for 4,000 years. To reach the bottom, Inanna had to pass through 7 gates, 7 doors set into the descent. And at each gate, the gatekeeper demanded a price. At the first gate, they took the crown from her head. At the second, they took the measuring rod and line, the symbols of her authority. At the third, the jewels from her neck. Gate by gate, deeper and deeper, they stripped her. The ornaments from her breast, the ring from her hand, the royal robe from her body. At each threshold, she protested. At each threshold, she was told the same thing. "Be silent, Inanna. The ways of the underworld are perfect. They may not be questioned." And when she passed through the 7th and final gate, she stood before her sister, naked and powerless. Everything that made her a goddess of the bright world had been taken at the doors behind her. She had nothing left, and the judges of that place rose to meet her. Stop here and feel the architecture of this story. 7 doors, a descent in stages. At each stage, something is taken from you, and you cannot go back up to retrieve it. You can only go down. Does that not sound in its bones like Derinkuyu? Level after level, rolling stone after rolling stone, each one sealing the way behind you. The Sumerians imagined the journey into the earth as a sequence of doors that lock behind the traveler. And 4,000 years later, in the rock of Cappadocia, real human beings built exactly that, in stone to save their lives. Now, who were the judges who rose to meet Inanna at the bottom? The tablets give them a name that should make the hair on your arm stand up if you've followed this channel before. They were the Anunnaki. In the underworld texts, the Anunnaki are seated as the 7 judges of the dead, the great ones, the 7 who pronounce sentence in the place below. They fixed Inanna with what the tablet calls the eye of death, spoke against her the word of wrath, the cry of guilt, and she was struck down, turned, the text says, into a corpse, a piece of rotting meat, hung from a hook on the wall of the great below. The most radiant being in the Sumerian sky, hung on a hook in the dark, by the judges beneath the earth. That is what the tablet says, not interpretation. The text. And this is the moment to ask the question that hangs over this entire video. What did the Sumerians mean when they wrote of so many sent beneath the earth, of multitudes in the great below? Because the underworld in their imagination was not empty, it was crowded. It was a vast populated kingdom of the descended, and not all of them, the texts hint, had simply died of old age in their beds. Hold that thought, because before we open the final door, we need to talk about the things the Sumerians believed could come up, and the things that could drag you down. The dead were supposed to stay below. That was the order of the world, but the Sumerians lived in genuine fear that the boundary could break, that the door could swing the wrong way. They had a word for the restless dead, the Atemu, the ghost or spirit of one who had died, and they believed, with deep seriousness, that an Atemu could return to torment the living if the proper rites were not observed. Above all, the dead had to be buried, and the dead had to be remembered, fed with offerings, named aloud by their descendants, a spirit that was forgotten, or one whose body lay unburied, exposed, abandoned. That spirit had no rest below and no peace above. It would rise. It would cling to the living. It would bring sickness and madness and ruin. Think of what that means for the multitudes sent beneath the earth. If you bury thousands of people in the dark, and the rites are not kept, and the names are not spoken, the Sumerian worldview says you have not simply hidden them. You have created an army of the restless, 10,000 Atemu, with no one left to feed them or call their names. The text gives us the formula for horror, without ever raising its voice. And then there were the Gallu. If the Atemu were the dead who came up, the Gallu were the things that came up to take you down. The Gallu were demons of the underworld, the enforcers of the great below, and their single function in the tablets is merciless and specific. They drag the living down into the Kura. They know no food and know no drink. The texts say they accept no gift. They cannot be bribed, cannot be reasoned with, feel no tenderness. They tear the wife from the husband's side, the child from the father's knee, and they do not do this out of cruelty for its own sake. They do it because a debt is owed below, and the debt must be paid in bodies. In the very story of Inanna, when she is finally allowed to leave the underworld, and we will come to how, there is a price. The law of that place is absolute. No one ascends from the land of no return without leaving someone in their place. The door does not give for free. To come up, someone else must go down. And so the Gallu climbed the 7 gates at her side, clinging to her, watching, waiting to seize whoever will be sent below to take her place. The door, you see, keeps its arithmetic. The earth is owed a body, and the earth collects. Now lift your eyes for a moment from the clay and look at what we have done in the modern age, because the parallel is about to become unbearable. In the far north of Russia, on the Kola Peninsula, near the border with Norway, there is a place where the Soviet Union tried to do something no one had ever done. They tried to drill a hole into the earth as deep as they possibly could. Not for oil, not for minerals, for knowledge. They wanted to pierce the crust of the planet itself, to drill down and down until they reached secrets no human eye had ever seen. They called it the Kola Superdeep Borehole, and they began in 1970. They drilled for nearly 20 years, and they went deeper than anyone before or since. The deepest branch of the borehole reached more than 12,000 kilometers worth of effort, compressed into a single vertical wound in the earth, over 12 kilometers straight down, more than 7.5 miles into the planet's crust. It remains the deepest artificial point on Earth, a hole so deep that the temperature at the bottom soared far beyond what they had predicted, the rock growing hot and strangely plastic, almost flowing, the drill bit fighting a heat that the engineers had not believed possible. And then, in the early 1990s, they stopped. The project was abandoned. The conditions at the bottom had become, in the words of the scientists themselves, impossible to continue against the unexpected heat. The behavior of the rock, the limits of the machinery. The hole was capped. A heavy metal lid, welded and bolted, was placed over the opening. And today, if you make the journey to that desolate, wind-scoured site, you will find a ruined building, and set into a slab of concrete, a small rusted metal cap, sealed shut, over the deepest doorway humanity ever opened into the body of the earth. We dug down as far as we could go, and then we sealed the door and walked away. There is a famous legend attached to Kola, the so-called well to hell, the story that the Soviet drillers lowered a microphone into the deepest cavity and recorded the screams of the damned, the sounds of millions of tormented voices rising from a hollow space miles beneath the surface. We will be completely honest with you, because that is the promise of this channel. That story is not true. It is a documented hoax, a piece of folklore that spread in the early 1990s and was later traced and debunked. There were no screams. There was no recording of hell. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise as fact. But notice what the human imagination did the instant we drilled that deep. The instant we made a real hole into the dark below. We filled it automatically, irresistibly, with the multitudes of the damned, with the screaming of those sent beneath the earth. The Sumerians did this 4,000 years ago with a stylus and wet clay. We did it in the 20th century with a microphone and a rumor. The land of no return is not only a place in the ground, it is a place in us. We cannot dig down without hearing, in our own minds, the voices of those who went below and did not come back. So let us go to the final door, the door that this entire video has been descending toward. Let us open carefully the climax of the matter, the Sumerians and the Babylonians who inherited their myths. Describe the boundary of the underworld as a sealed thing, a gate, a locked door at the threshold of the great below. In the related Babylonian text, the descent of Ishtar. Ishtar being the later name of Inanna, the goddess arrives at the gate of the land of no return, and makes a threat so terrible it has echoed for millennia. If you do not open this gate, she cries to the gatekeeper, I will smash the door, I will shatter the bolt, I will break the doorpost, I will raise up the dead, and the dead will rise and eat the living, until the dead outnumber the living. The dead will outnumber the living. That is the threat at the door. That is what is being held back by the seal, and it tells you everything about how seriously the ancient mind took that threshold. The door of the underworld is not a decoration. It is the last line between the world of breath and the multitudes of the dust. As long as it holds, the order of the world holds. If it breaks, the arithmetic reverses, and the below pours up into the above. This is why the land of no return is defined, above all, by its door. The whole place is named for what the door does. It is not the land of the dead. It is the land of no return, the land you can enter but not leave, because the door is built to swing one way, down, always down, like the rolling stones of Derinkuyu that open only from the inside, like the welded steel cap over the Kola borehole that no one will ever lift again, like the blast door of the Billionaires bunker, engineered above all to keep what is outside from getting in, and in the worst imaginable case, to keep what is inside from being reached. And now return with me to where we began, to right now, to 2025 and 2026, and the underground race unfolding beneath our feet as you watch this, because we are doing it again. We are, as a species, once more sending people beneath the earth and sealing the door behind them. The richest human beings alive are paying for the deepest private shelters ever built, fitted with air systems and water systems and doors designed to hold for years. Governments are carving out deep facilities they will not name and will not show. We are building our own Derinkuyu, our own Kur, our own land of no return, and we are telling ourselves, exactly as the people of Cappadocia told themselves, that this is safety, that below is where you survive. But ask the question the Sumerians could not stop asking. When you seal a door that is meant never to open from the outside, are you keeping the danger out, or are you sealing yourself in? When you send thousands beneath the earth and weld the cap above them, who exactly is being protected, and from whom? The people of Derinkuyu rolled the great stone shut and prayed the threat would pass. But a door that locks from one side does not know the difference between a refuge and a tomb. It only knows that once it closes, no one is coming back up. The Sumerian tablet recorded the multitudes sent beneath the earth and the door that never let them back, and the law of that place, that the below is owed bodies, and the below collects. They wrote it as the oldest warning we possess, not as a story about the dead, as a story about descent. about the human instinct, in every age of terror, to go down into the dark and seal the door, and about the terrible simple truth that some doors are built to open only one way. We promised you the names, the descent, the door, and we have paid that promise in full. The 10,000 of the dust, the 7 gates that strip you, the Anunnaki judges seated below, the Gallu who collect the debt in bodies, the Atemu who rise when they are forgotten, and the sealed gate that holds the dead back from the living. And we promised you the truth, plainly told, that Derinkuyu and the Kola Borehole are documented and real, that Inanna's Descent says exactly what we have told you it says, and that the screams from the well to hell are a hoax and nothing more. We do not need to lie to you. The record is frightening enough. If this descent held you, if you felt the cold of those gates and the weight of those stones, then do this one small thing before you go back up to the surface and the light. Subscribe to the channel. Every subscriber is a name spoken aloud, a memory kept, a refusal to be forgotten. And on this channel we keep the names. Subscribe and you will be here when we open the next door. Because there is one question we have not answered, and it is the one that should keep you awake tonight. Inanna did come back. She is the rare being in the entire literature who descended through all 7 gates, was struck down, hung on the hook, dead in the grate below, and yet returned to the surface alive. She broke the law of the land of no return. She came back through the door that never lets anyone back. The tablets tell us how it was done, and they tell us the price that was paid for it. The substitute who was dragged down screaming to take her place, so that the door's arithmetic would balance. So here is the question we will answer next. If the door can be opened from below, if there is a way back up out of the land of no return, then who in all the long descent of human history has paid the price to use it, and what came back up through the door with them?